Thank you. So I just want to mention that initially, I wanted actually my colleague Pretya to do this talk. There he is. But he teamed up with his wife and made another kit. So yeah, thanks to baby Nora for this opportunity that I have. Yeah, anyway, I'm Georgy. I'm a co-founder at this nice little lovely nonprofit that we founded, which is called Open Source Software Institute, which is super humble, right? And they usually ask you to kind of submit the talk and description way ahead of time when you don't have the presentation. So I would like to rename it to something like The Hidden Economics of Open Source Software, and Are We All Just Farmers? It doesn't make sense now, but it will. I promise. A bit about me first. So I'm a software engineer. I was always a software engineer. I never done anything else in my life. I started about 10 years ago when I was still in school, so probably as many of you as well. And I'm an ex-pipe driver, so I'm super hyped to kind of be in the home crowd of sorts. Yay. There you go. And now I'm kind of indie hacking. In my case, it just means I'm unemployed and I don't have income. So in pipe drive, we would say it is what it is. So around, that is misaligned, but you know, it doesn't matter. So around the internet, you should find me under this username that looks like typo. So if you want to reach out or anything like that, just Google it, Google this, and you should be fine. Check out the GitHub stuff. There's some interesting things there.
How do you pronounce it?
I don't. And I would like to start with this analogy. I kept forgetting this word, so I wrote it on my wrist. Analogy that software engineers are like farmers. So basically, farmers get seeds that have no value, basically. And over time, they create something that has a lot of value, right? They can sell it, they can use it themselves, some crops, basically. And software engineers are the same, right? We get a code that has no value, and it's seemingly out of nothing. We create over time something that has a value, and we can sell it, we can use it ourselves. So just remember that we're all like farmers. So who are we? Farmers. Yes, accountants. I would like to cover a few things in this talk. So first is how much open source do we actually use? Second is how does open source make money? And third, maybe we'll get into some issues in the previous ones, and you know, we can cover how to solve it, basically. So first is how much open source do we even use? And when I encounter these kind of problems, I usually use this technique described by, who's it, Rondell Monroe, something like that. If you don't know him, you probably know him. He's this NASA engineer that quit his job, and now he's doing comics for a living, and great story. And he basically, in one of his books, described this technique where if you're not looking for exact answers, you just simplify the problem as much as possible, right? And so that's what okay, so an example of that would be like 8 times 12, you're looking for that, but you can do 10 times 10 and you're gonna get pretty much the same number. So I was trying to kind of find what percentage of my application consists of kind of external code, some open source, right? And basically I simplified it to whatever comes from node modules is external, whatever doesn't come from node modules is my own code. And I use this for this exercise. I used Webpack Analyzer, which is, you probably use this tool. If you have problems with like big bundles, you can visualize with that, you know, what's the big part of it, basically. But I also created this stats.json file, which consists of like all the modules inside of your application. So basically all the files, including the sizes. So when you have that information, it's super easy to kind of calculate what's the percentage, right? So I started with some front-end applications that I had on hand. I just picked 5 random ones that I had there. Because we're not looking for exact numbers, right? It's gonna be different for each. And the outcome was something like 48 up to over 70 for those applications that, you know, have Next and React and everything, and you just kind of add a bit of your own Vue code. And yeah, so the numbers were pretty big, and I was expecting the backend part to be a bit bigger, actually. And that was true. I think the average was about like 3% more or something like that. Just, I'm guessing because in the front-end code, you have those use cases that, you show something to a user, while in API, you just kind of, it's more straightforward. So after spending a few hours on that, I talked to my friend about this, and he suggested to ask ChatGPT. So I wasted a few hours of my of my life, and I asked ChatGPT, and it eventually gave me some number. But I don't know if you tried to ever kind of ask ChatGPT about exact numbers on things that don't have exact kind of answers, right? It can differ from use case to use case. So the conversation went something more like this. But eventually, we arrived on some number, which was 70%. It took it from some black duck analysis, which is part of NASDAQ. They are doing a lot of analysis on open source. So just think about that. 70% is a huge number, right? That just means that even if you're not using too much open source, majority of your code that you ship is probably not yours at all, right? And we're not counting like all the build tools, Webpack, all the ESLint, I don't know, all of that, right? That's not part of the bundle. So let's go back to our analogy with the farmers. So I was thinking, okay, are we farmers? Do we create something out of nothing? We have all of this prepared for us, kind of. So I arrived on the thought that I'm more like a chef, right? So I take these tomatoes, grinded meat and all of that, and I create, in 1 hour, I can create this delicious chili con carne. In my case, it wouldn't be 1 hour, but more like 3, and it wouldn't be tasty, but the point stands. I can super quickly create something that has a lot of value and take all the credit, while the farmer is working for months and months to make it all possible. Right, so it doesn't seem fair, kind of. Now there is the second question. So how does open source make money? And I simplified this one a bit as well into 4 groups. So first is corporate funded. So that means that some organization basically creates some software for their own purposes and then puts it out for free. So good example of that is React and Meta, right? Next one I would call bootstrapped, but I'm not sure about the name actually. And that's basically open sources that figure out how to make money out of it as well. So they put out the software for free, but then maybe they charge money for some learning materials that, so you can use the software effectively, or maybe some cloud service on the side that you can use but don't have to, right? That makes it kind of more convenient. What's the example of this? Maybe Apollo GraphQL could be one. Then we go into sponsored. So those are basically the open sources that figure out a way how to make their users kind of donate enough money to sustain the operation. That's good as well, but not as good as Bootstrapped, obviously. And I think example of that would be Vue.js. I don't think they kind of make money on their own, but they get a lot of donations. And the fourth one is none of the above. So basically, those are the ones that don't make any money at all, or very little, and didn't figure out anyway, right? And that's the biggest group, obviously. I'm not talking like small open sources. I'm even talking like Axios, which has 100K stars on GitHub. And you probably use it in your company as well. But they do get some donations, but it's not like far from being enough to sustain even one person kind of working on it. Maybe you heard the story of Denis Pushkarev, aka Zloirok. Anyone? Okay, you might know him as a Core.js guy. Okay, more people. He basically, he's working on this Core.js thing, which is a set of polyfills that makes us able to kind of run half of the web as we know it. And he was working on it for years and years, kind of maintaining it, sometimes even full-time, without any pay. Meanwhile, he got to prison, he had a kid, and stuff like that. So obviously, his story is super extreme. But people can get even into like these kind of situations as well. So let's go back to this analogy with the farmers, right? So the farmers work for months, and they create something for us, for the chefs. We take that super quickly, create something that has a value, and get our salary for it. And then there's the restaurant owner, which is just companies that like employ us, and they make $1 million and then buy the Vision Pro when they have it. Nice. I spend a lot of time on that. I want to make it clear that there is no kind of dark scheme or anything like that. No one wants to kind of exploit anyone, but this is just where we kind of arrive naturally over time. And so let's say that we kind of agree that there is some problem with that system that we live in. So what do we do about it? So who here is a software engineer? Okay, quite a lot of people. And who here, as a part of their daily job, kind of contributes to the tools that you use, the open source tools? Okay, few people, a good crowd. And who would like it to be more part of their daily job? Okay, quite a lot of people. I wanted to kind of show off that the software engineers' motivation is not the problem, right? We use these tools for a reason. We love it. And if nothing else, it just makes our lives easier, so it's good for us to make it better. So that's not a problem. So what else could it be? Now, this is my own opinion, and so don't blame anyone else for it. But I've been kind of thinking about this problem and kind of been invested in it for a long time. And I would say the problem is lack of opportunity. So basically, your companies don't create enough opportunities for you to kind of give back to your community, to work on these tools, and be part of it, basically. But there is a twist. You are part of your company. And we can't expect kind of CTO to invest time in this. He's running a business. We can't expect product manager to invest time in this. Maybe they don't know some open source exists. So it's really up to us to make the change. So if there's a chance that if there's no one in your company or in your team kind of going that direction and pushing that direction, maybe it should be you. That's what I'm trying to say. And that brings me to my last slide, which is Ketchup Days. That's why the whole thing is covered in Ketchup. That's the first initiative of the OSSI that we're working on. And yeah, you can visit the website, read about it. You can write us for sure. And basically, we're trying to kind of teach companies how to kind of implement contributing back to open source into their development process. At the same time, we're trying to learn how to do it better, right? Because maybe we can learn from the companies as well. And yeah, we're starting out. We're small. We have plenty of ideas to do. If you have some ideas, let us know. We're looking for ideas. We're looking for anything, really. We have plenty of coding work to do for some internal tooling as well. So yeah, if you're interested, reach out. And that's it from me for today.
Thank you, Georgy. So, questions. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one isn't actually a question because we've never met, but somehow I guess that you will be talking about Randall Munroe. So for those who don't know him, this is an excellent book called What If? I strongly recommend it. It's one of his, I don't know, 3 books, something like that.
I have that one at home, yes.
So that's Randall Munroe. But my question is, the talk was mostly about open source, I would say libraries, perhaps tools. Where do you think we are standing when it comes to open source, end applications? Because I feel like we have much more open source libraries than 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But somehow I feel that we have perhaps fewer open source applications. For example, on my computer, I still run like at least 90% of open source applications, maybe more. On my phone, it's like 5 of them. Do you think this has a solution?
So what's the question? Like we should get more open source applications? Or how do we get more open source applications?
Maybe you don't.
Okay. Well, I know, for example, Dev.2 is like open source community, right? So they have this kind of community of developers sharing. At the same time, the platform itself is open source, I think, right? So I guess it's all about kind of finding how to make it sustainable in the long run, right? Otherwise, we'll end up in this situation where you go to prison or something. So yeah, that would be my take. Kind of think how to make it more sustainable, right? So even if it's open source, you need to pay for the servers. You need to pay for something, right? For your work, maybe something like that. So yeah, we should think more in that business direction somehow. Maybe the learning materials could be monetized, right, or something like that. But yeah, nice point.
Next one. Nobody? Okay.
A lot of questions today.
I can keep going. I guess first question would be, what projects would you recommend, like for a standard front-end developer, like to start with?
Right.
Because there are many projects, and all of them have different levels of like friendliness towards contributors, let's say.
Right.
So that's the first. And other one, just out of my curiosity, is like, what you feel is your biggest contribution to open source so far?
Okay. What was the first one? No, the friendly one, right. So for that one, you know, some open source libraries, some open source libraries basically use these tags on GitHub, where it's like good first issue or something like that. So that means that like someone who doesn't know the repository too well should be able to hit that issue and kind of be able to resolve it on his own. So maybe you should look for those repositories. But I would suggest to kind of go first for whatever you're interested in, right? Maybe you're using it yourself and you like using it. So yeah, you need to be kind of passionate about, you know, you want to solve this. And that's the main thing, I would say. And then second one was...
What's your most contribution?
Right, my own. I don't have many. No, I do create some of my own kind of open source. Sometimes I complain, so I create issues, and that's the important part as well, when something doesn't work correctly. But yeah, it's not really about only writing code, right? And many maintainers can spend like more than half of the time of the work just kind of dealing with issues, open issues, right? And that's why you can see like thousands of open issues on some repositories. So even if you are not really coding and you kind of go into more like, okay, I will reply close issues actively or something like that, right? And kind of sort them out. That's already kind of helping out the project to move forward. So I didn't answer your question, but...
Okay, next one, let's say last question before we ask for next speaker. So that was already, no? Okay, so thank you, Georgy, again. Thank you very much.